Hey guys, welcome to this week's episode. Wanted to introduce you guys to a new segment. This is a recap episode for the first previous 4 episodes that we've had for Shane's case. First and foremost, happy Thanksgiving. Thank you again for joining me on Shane's investigation. Today we got 2 segments that we're going to be diving into for this episode. We're going to have a recap between Sarah and I, but we're also going to add something new this season, and that's a recap with the team from the first trip, allowing you guys to get the perspective and opinions and thoughts and takeaways from also not just me, but also the team. Ethan, Shane, Tristan, Alex, just our time at the property. The purpose of this is just to be able to, I know that there's a lot of stuff that's been shared with this case. It's a very sensitive case, and there's a lot of emotions that go into these cases. So by going into this and sharing and having maybe just a little bit more casual conversation and just diving into the details and discussing it might help with Shane's investigation and give you guys a little bit more context and understanding, trying to figure out what happened. Maybe there's something that you guys hear or a takeaway that you guys want to share. It's very difficult when, with social media, how easy stuff just takes off. Next week's episode will be a regular one. We'll be diving back into it after a reenactment with Rachael. Just wanted to introduce you guys to the episode. Hopefully you guys appreciate it. This is a video format, so if you guys want to watch these interviews and kind of get some more behind the scenes film, feel free to jump on Spotify. It doesn't cost anything. It's free. But this will be the first video format we've done for a podcast approach on this. So hopefully you like it. Again, happy Thanksgiving. Stay safe. Keep talking about Shane. Keep talking about Brittany. Keep talking about Logan. And keep talking about Nancy. All love. Appreciate you guys. I'll catch you guys next time on Hide and Seek. New segment. We're doing a recap for in season 4. I know I'm sick and tired of hearing in last week's episode, so we're going to change it up and do a recap episode. We'd start off with bringing the team on. Real quick, I'll let everybody say hi, introduce the whole squad. Shane, wave real quick. There we go. We got Tristan, Alex, Ethan, and Sarah. There we go.
So you guys are all in the car. You arrived to the property. Or are you in 2 vehicles?
You know what? At this time, I forced them all to come with me, and that lasted for 1 day. If you could tell on Shane's face, was not feeling it. So fortunately, Tristan brought his car out for this trip, and we had 2 vehicles moving forward. So we're all in the car together, though, during this
day.
As we're
this
arriving.
Is one day. When you arrive, Jam was really curious about, and so was I, was the sound of Charlie's bellows. Like, are you going to hear it? You're not going to hear it. So Shane, tell me what your first impression was.
Yeah, it was super awesome, super scary, super interesting. It was perfect. Just so much what I anticipated it being. We pulled, it's probably a little under a quarter-mile drive on a gravel road up to Rachel's property. And pretty much the second you pass the gate, you have line of sight for Charlie, this huge bull. And we pulled up to her property. It had just gotten dark. We're driving on a gravel road. It's just headlights. It's very rural, so we don't see lighting pretty much anywhere except occasionally on the stoop of someone's house. And James was anticipating trying to hear Charlie. So he rolls down the windows and we pull up. We don't know what anything looks like. And you can hear it in the episode. I'm not going to fail at an imitation. Very chilling and haunting bellow. And I couldn't help but smile just because I was like, this feels like out of a film. What better way to start this investigation than this haunting scream where if we didn't already know it was a bull, I think we all would have been really shook.
Because you have some, pre-ideas about this bull, you know that it's a bull, but when you realize that you're going to be spending time on the property with the bull, what's that like? Ethan, were you scared?
No. I was scared.
Were you?
Yeah, I was like, what did James do? Why did he bring us up into, there's trees, we can't leave because like Shane said, there's the gravel road. There's only one way out of there. The sun had just set and it was dusk and pretty terrifying.
I'm curious on Alex's opinion because Alex lives in California, right? So it's much different, drastic scene change, right?
Very much. I'm basically a city boy, I guess you could say. I mean, I've lived in like suburbs and stuff, nothing like that. I've experienced that kind of terrain before, so that wasn't necessarily the surprising part. It was kind of just more of how many. It felt like being on a farm, combined with a. There's like cars everywhere, so it's almost like a junkyard too. A lot of mud. There's the garage, and then there's the house, and then the property circles around it. So you are kind of stuck in this little circle. I wasn't scared. I actually loved it. Me and Shane didn't talk about what he said, but that's exactly how I felt. And I get really excited anytime I'm in an experience that feels like you're in a movie. And it definitely felt like that. My main goal being there is to stoke in as much about what it would be like to live there or experience any of the things that Rachael did, and then put that into the music. Like, I've used sound of the pool in a couple of the songs. Like, I went to that, I don't know if it was the Law of Recording or one of them, and I just extracted that because the sound it's crazy. It's perfect. And I just get excited anytime I hear a sound that I've never heard before. And then also just the goats in the goat pen. I don't know if you call it a goat pen, but because it started to get dark, that was the part that creeped me out the most, was how many of them, and when it's dark, their eyes kind of light up a little bit. I don't, like James said, I don't know this farm stuff, so I definitely was more creeped out by that.
The most telling thing right away when you hear Charlie, though, you think he doesn't know, obviously, us. He's not familiar with us. There's no doubt if there was a car that came, this dude is making noise. And I remember just feeling like, okay, if she didn't hear this, and then obviously who came up here, either he knew them and knew what was going on, or Shane left and he was just trying to get him, because Rachael says he makes a sound, like, hey, Dad, come see me, type of thing. So if that's what he did, there's no doubt a car came all the way up. That didn't happen, in my opinion. We came up, we saw it, we heard it. Very, 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 very loud. Didn't stop. Even when we're on the property, as we're walking around still. We're in the shop, makes noise. Alex heads out there, makes noise. Yeah. And actually, during that, we head into Shane's shop to meet Rachael. I think it was during one of your live sessions you guys talked about that. I was pretty kind of caught off guard that she just didn't come out and meet me. So I was kind of like hesitant to even walk in. It does make it challenging, though, when Rachael, we've talked about this. She says he always makes noise. Well, wait a second. Does he know the car? Does he not know the car?
So do you think there's a difference between the noises? Like, she says he always makes noise. So I guess, those two things can be true. Like, is there a noise that he makes that she would recognize if it's strangers like you guys coming, as opposed to, like, Shane coming home from whatever? Do you think there's a different noise?
I heard the different noises. When he sees her, he'll make a couple of grunts and, like, she'll acknowledge him. Those sounds when he's trying to get her attention, there's a difference. There's one that someone's here, and then there's the, hey, I'm trying to get your attention.
When he's giving a warning, it becomes almost an elk sound, like a lot more of a whistle.
It's like a war call.
Yeah.
Like the equivalent of hitting a gong or whatever was used. That's what it's imitating when we arrived.
Makes you wonder what he saw that day.
I thought about that a lot.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Same with the goats. They're just always staring at things. And I look at them like, I wish you could talk.
I know.
Yeah. So when you guys, get settled, like the car's parked, and Jam is going to go in and, meet Rachael in the shop, but he's not really expecting to go in without a greeting, kind of thinks she's going to come out. And you guys all stay in the car. So he gets out, and I have seen the video, he kind of looks back unsure. Was there an unsure moment for any of you?
Yeah, for sure. You have an idea of what it's going to look like, and then it doesn't look like that at all. The aerial view that we looked at, it's just different there. There's things that are, I think Alex said it earlier, like some junk cars and some things that are just where they shouldn't be, it seems. Mm-hmm. You're like, why is this here? Who intentionally designed this? Obviously, not the space isn't super intentional in a lot of ways. It's just sort of functional, or, things are where they are because that's where they are. And so there's a moment where James has to go up to the shed, and the door is like off to the side. So it's not like he's walking into the door and we can see. He's walking into the door and he's gone. I think Ethan was the first one to go in after James.
Well, you walk in first before anybody else, right, Jim?
Yeah.
So you're kind of
I'm also
unsure if you should go in.
You're right. I'm also operating off of a call we just had. Like, if you guys don't remember, she was like, "You fucked up," and I was like, "We haven't even met you yet. What happened?" Like, right? So it kind of it starts it off that way, and I'm like, "Jeez!" Like,
yeah, that's something I was thinking about too. Is like you have been in pretty consistent contact with her for was it a month, 2 months?
About a month.
So even if you guys are meeting in person for the first time, there is some rapport.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what she was writing off of, but it still isn't. Yeah, walking into this strange horror movie scene, not the most comforting to like come into the shop.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I mean, you show up to anybody's house. Natural instinct isn't just let yourself in, but you also know I'm arriving. So like, where are you at? And like entering that, calling, and I'm like, hey, she's like, I'm in the shop. Cool. Are you all right? No. We head into the shop. In that transition, getting in, once we got in there, it almost seemed like we'd seen each other every day for years. I even had to like stop and be like, hey, let's just put a pin in this for a second. We're here. Hi, nice to meet you. Like, we're meeting for the first time. This is Ethan. This, Shane's shop though. It helped me understand why she was sleeping out there in the conditions that it was, knowing that, like, seeing it fireplace there, seeing it somewhat, if she threw a cot in here and she was really caring for her animals, I could see that happening. When I first heard about the case, I was like, what's the scene look like? This seems weird. And she's in because it's referred to as a barn, a shop, a garage. Like, what is it? We were there when it was cold out, so she had the stove running the entire time. A lot of his stuff still hung up, all of his plaques, trophies, memorabilia. You really kind of see what this guy cared about and where, his joy and passion was based on all the stuff from Rider 912, his writing plate number, banners, again, so many plaques. You kind of know you're stepping into his world.
Was walking in and seeing all of like his memorabilia and that kind of stuff, was that kind of what you expected when you walked in?
Yeah, I don't know what to. I didn't really have an expectation going. You kind of just
do it.
Yeah, no expectations. Went in and kind of just soak it all in.
Ethan, Tristan said you were the next one to go in after Jam goes in. What was it like for you walking in? Were you confident walking in there, or was it kind of odd feeling?
I never know how people are going to react to the camera.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually.
I do it anyway. I don't really think about it. I just do it.
Ethan's so funny to watch work, honestly, because he just puts the camera out there and like no one reacts to him. I always say this. I think I've said it multiple times. It's awesome to watch him work because he's just so natural and comfortable. But
he'll be chilling.
Did Rachael react to the camera?
Did Rachael react to the camera? Do you remember, Ethan?
I don't think so. I think she just.
I think it would. Like I said, when we walked in, she acted like she knew us for years. Like she just makes you feel welcome. That's her personality.
And did that put you at ease?
Yeah, for me it does. I mean, granted, like emotions came down from the phone call.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like you go from this tense phone call, then you get there and you're a little weirded out that you've got to let yourself in, but then you meet her and you're at ease.
Yes, there's not going to be this awkward, lingering
weird tension. Yeah,
kind of spoke to me about the culture of how she runs things, about her life. One thing that stood out to me, I think it was during trip 3, I was like, hey, I'd love to go say hi to the goats again. You okay with that? And she's like, what the F are you asking me for? Go see the goats. I was like, oh, all right. She's just used to having a friendly atmosphere, home. Like, there's no threats. Everyone's vibing. Come say hi, come hang out, go use my bathroom. Don't talk to me about it. Just go use it. Like, you're welcome to. I think it was it ended up being less ominous that she didn't greet us and more like, you're welcome in the shop any freaking time. Like, just come, it definitely felt like we'd known each other for a while. Right. It was right into being friends and communicating. And
in terms of just how close she felt, she mentioned it during that trip. Like, she felt like she knew you guys. She trusted you guys. She felt like you guys were her friends. And so that's her personality.
Was there anything about being in the shop that made you think there's a lot here that could hurt somebody?
Well, yes, and at one point I did find all the guns in that like safe in the corner of the shop.
Yeah.
I'm also not. I'm a like pretty anti-gun, so that's another thing that was like there's a lot of weapons over here that I'm not used to, and she's a little bit too loose with the guns for my taste, I would say. It didn't necessarily make me nervous, but it's like uneasy. I'm not used to that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's like Tristan said earlier about things being out of place, like not where they're supposed to be. You definitely get that feeling on the property because there's just so much there.
Is it like chaotic? Is it like
it feels very chaotic? Like you kind of feel how she probably feels living there, and that's even without the context of a missing husband. It's just living there itself seems pretty chaotic with all the animals and just all the items they have and the shop, the house, the whole area in the house that's closed off that was like still in construction. It's very chaotic there. And then the entire space around it, like once we explored that later on the Humvee or whatever you call that. Yeah, that's a whole other thing of just acres of land that add to the chaotic and like the possibilities that of that place.
Yeah.
The whole landscape there to me is really important to understand when listening to the episodes. Like that's another thing that I don't know how I would feel if I had never been there listening to the episodes, because it's really helpful hearing her voice and James and knowing exactly where they were when they were saying these words. Like that's a cool experience for me listening to it. And that property is just really, it's like a character in itself. It's a cliche you hear a lot, but I definitely think it applies to that property.
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it, actually. A character in itself. Yeah.
I grew up on property, rural Eastern Washington, definitely a little bit more conservative leaning too. Alex is absolutely valid in his perspective of how things are, and especially considering the guns. And for me, I'm like, she's got 11 acres with probably, what is it, James? Is it like 1,000 empty acres surrounding her almost?
Yeah, I mean, put behind her. Yeah. Yeah.
You're bored. You're not hopping on Reddit. You barely have Wi-Fi. Go shoot some guns, And it depends on where you're from and the vibe of it. She never walked over to where the guns were. Or I wasn't put off by that. I looked at it a lot more like we're in rural Washington. People have guns, And what drew my attention a little bit more was this 15-foot banner she had laid out in the middle of the shop. They had like she had a 15-foot banner that had photos of several different missing people. It had Logan, right, James?
Yep. Nancy.
Matthew Renfeld, Logan.
It almost felt like it was laid out for us to see, The next trip, it was still there.
Is that a sobering moment when you're standing there, when you arrive to this place and there's this banner, you're standing there with his wife? Is that a sobering moment for you guys?
There's the time for play, which we vibe. We have a good time. We enjoy each other's company on our trips. And then there is faster than a light switch, time to work, and the realization that like this is some heavy stuff.
Yeah.
When you're in the shop, you are out of any space in the property, you are in Shane's space. More than the trailer, more than the RV, like, more than like the places he would actually sleep, for example, or are like intended for sleeping, you are in his space. And so seeing the poster of him with all the other missing people was like weird, because it doesn't belong there. All the memorabilia up on the walls, it belongs there. The tools, even feeling like, okay, I don't want to knock something over, things that feel misplaced or out of place. But the poster, was interesting. At the time, I think I was thinking, oh, this is cool. It's here. We can film it. We can use, it's like it.
Sure.
But as I think about it now, I'm like, that was weird that was there. And it was literally in the middle of the shop. Like there was kind of an island of junk, boxes, different things.
I did appreciate, that she kept a lot of that stuff up there. Barton Built Racing banner, some of his memorabilia, but
my feeling was, this is a giant property. How can she afford to even be here? Possibly.
Were you surprised at the size of the property, Ethan?
Oh yeah, especially when I learned that there's hundreds of acres behind. That's unbelievable.
Of course, that's not her property, but still,
Right.
I don't have an acre. I will say I don't even have half an acre of property. Taking care of half an acre of my lawn in the summer from season long, like, it's a lot of work. Like, she's doing it. You think about the animals we talked about. You have 20 goats. You got to take care of them. You got Charlie. It's a lot of land. So when we're out there walking it, you're just thinking, holy smokes! Like,
immediately you see that this woman is hardcore. She closed carries everywhere. She takes care of almost 30 living beings. She is not remotely timid to be there in her trailer in the middle of the night, a good ways away from anyone that could help her, with spotty cell service.
Right.
She's strong. Yeah.
So you walk down the incline, and this is the place where he had ridden. So do you see any kind of trail there?
Not enough, because you could hear when we're talking about it. I'm like, through here, because there's too much overgrowth. But it's a year later, so I'm trying to okay, are you sure it's here? So she's trying to remember something that over a year later, that a path that she hasn't taken.
Sure.
Or I think it was over here, but it's in this area.
Yeah.
It hasn't been traveled since. So I'm like, okay, maybe that was more of a Shane thing. Who knows?
We had our first trip towards the beginning of the year and our last trip towards the end of the year, like the summer season. For listeners, the property, the environment there breathes. Growth happens crazily. Tristan and I had the opportunity to just ourselves drive the side-by-side around and go down different paths. And on our last trip, the paths that we went on were nowhere to be found. How quickly, how short of a time the property can change its entire vibe.
Yeah.
I even remember Charlie the bull's like area where the fence was, because he would press with his horns. He'd like push parts of the fence. So between the different times that we were there, the entire area would shift. Like, she'd try, staking it down, and there's different things. But then also like the mud, that's created, it rains, and Charlie like presses in the dirt in the ground. So then that also changes how the fence is in relationship to the actual ground. And then that is how he can like push it and move it around. So she has to constantly like make that a space that works for him.
And it's one thing for us to say this, right? It's another thing for us to say, hey, go fix the fence.
Yes.
Right? So she's out there having to do it. And so that's the part where I'm like, okay, this is a lot of work. Shane did this.
Yeah. It contributes to what Alex said about things seeming misplaced, or just the chaos of the environment.
Yeah.
If this were to be a pristine sort of whatever, it would take a lot of people. And this is her doing the best she can with all of this stuff around, and her trying to maintain. It's the best and very good that a single person could do,
And having to learn how to do this.
Yeah.
Because like Jam said, Shane did this. Now she's got to learn how to do it herself. When you're on the property, it's huge, it's expansive, a lot going on. Does this say anything to you about Shane's disappearance and the investigation that follows?
It complicates it for sure, because you're not in a suburb. You're not in even. I can't imagine, nor would I wish to, have been there that night where they brought everyone in to search, and it's raining, and the subsequent nights where it was just pouring down rain. We were there. That first trip, even though it was, I think, in March.
Mm-hmm.
The weather was pretty nice. Like, it rained, it sprinkled maybe. It never poured down rain, but even still, there was mud. Even on the places where you would just need to walk to get from point A to point B, it was not easy to get around. And so just that environment, when you go to look like what happened on the property, what was there something that happened there? That mystery is kind of added or compounded by the environment and by the kind of wildness of where she lives.
When you think about him being out in this property out in the country. And then you think, okay, well, let's look at the immediate households in around. And we know going down this road, it's a dead end. You only live down here, or you know somebody coming down here. Mm-hmm. Where his house is at, even if it was somebody who turned down the wrong road, they would have turned down way before his to turn around. Plenty of opportunities to, at least. Knowing that they did the FLIR and the air scent with the dogs at the back of the property, it leads me, I mean, I feel strongly to think, okay, he's probably not out back there then.
A question I had with the FLIR and the dogs and stuff, it's pouring rain and they're doing this scent tracing and stuff. I'm like, there's no way dogs are going to be able to smell that after pouring rain a day or two later. Like, how is that even helpful? But you gave me some insight. Would you be willing to talk about that for a sec? Yeah,
it's the way it was explained to me is if it rains when there's a fire, what does it do to the ash? I know that was something that was brought up in questions early on was, well, it was raining, so would they been able to track a scent? And naturally, some people might think, well, it's going to wash it away, right? Actually enhances it.
You mentioned somebody coming down the road, turning around. They'd turn around much earlier. There's been some chatter that I've heard about maybe somebody coming up the driveway and turning around. But is this really a driveway that you would go turn around in?
Imagine, like I try to explain, you're going up an incline, and like Shane said, as soon as you get to the top, you see it. If you look to the right, there's this really nice open yard, open scenery. It's a nice house. I'll just turn in and back out. I'm not going to go up this unrandom hill. Who knows what's up there? I don't even know. I'm not supposed to be on this road.
Okay, so one more question about this that we've talked about, and there's a lot of chat about. When you're at the bottom of the driveway, it's a two-part question. When you're at the bottom of the driveway, can you see any of the structures?
No.
And when you're at the top of the driveway in any of those structures, say standing on the porch of the house or the mobile home or the fifth wheel, can you see the bottom of the driveway from any of those vantage points?
No.
Okay.
The only places that have somewhat, like, say you're standing on the porch of her home, you can't see the actual entrance to the driveway, but you could see through the trees how the road passes the property. There are some lower points, and I would imagine the only time you could really see, unless you lived there and knew where to look, would be headlights from either side, maybe 200 feet. It comes up and then pulls up into the property, and the only way you could see anything is if they were past your property a fair amount, or if they were heading that way, and probably only if there were headlights.
That's a good point. I didn't think of headlights. Yeah, that's a good point. Alex, when you guys were out doing the day of kind of retracing her steps, you go to Starbucks where she goes to get Wi-Fi. I've heard you had an interesting experience there.
I actually forgot about this because that was pretty early on. But I couldn't connect to the Wi-Fi on my phone. I was wondering why she would go to that Starbucks if it was that difficult to connect. There was also a lot of people in there. It's open Wi-Fi, which you never really want to use if you don't have to. That's basically just like all your data is just for the taking. I was fixated on the phones, the Wi-Fi, the bill she was talking about, which phones she was using, why she was bringing them to that Starbucks specifically. There's got to be somewhere where you could get better Wi-Fi or go to a friend's house that actually has private Wi-Fi that is stronger. I don't know why she wouldn't do that. That's what I would do. I'd never go to a public place with that many people if it's as important as it was.
So I was looking at the film, and I didn't know this happened until I went back and looked at film. I'm sitting in the front seat with Rachael, and we're talking about her next movements, actions at Starbucks, and I'm watching film. All of a sudden, Ethan pans to you, and you're like looking at your phone, and you turn and you start showing. You go to Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
And you click Wi-Fi to Starbucks, and it says unable to join network.
Right. Exactly.
And I was like, huh?
Yeah.
Well, then as the story unfolds, I remember now I'm listening to it, and she says, well, the detective asked who Jack was. and she's like, yeah, because I actually connected to Jack in the Box Wi-Fi, which is right behind us.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But then
so is that what she was on the whole time?
That's a great question. We don't know. It's like the RV. It's like the side-by-side. she came up through this area. Okay, she's over here connecting to Wi-Fi. Okay, we know that. Why does she reference Starbucks? I don't know. If she's intentionally connecting to Wi-Fi, who knows? She doesn't connect just like you didn't. And until recently, a listener reached out to Sarah.
And what she tells me is that she tried to work from Starbucks and she was trying to connect in her car, trying to connect to Wi-Fi in her car on her laptop. Had no luck, could not do that. So she eventually brings her laptop in to Starbucks and learns that you can only connect from inside the store. So now we know that you cannot connect to Wi-Fi outside of the Starbucks store. Thank you to that listener.
Right. Okay, that's very interesting. So I would assume then that Rachael was always connecting to the Jack in the Box Wi-Fi if she was going down there, especially because if she didn't notice it, it just means her phone was automatically connecting to the Wi-Fi she was already on previously.
Thank you. What I got a follow-up question for that. I thought the same thing. Like, okay, what if she just automatically connects to it and that's her natural tendency? But if your phone's off, when she arrives, I think you're going to be pretty intentional about going to the Wi-Fi setting, unless it automatically connects, even with your cell plan down.
Oh, with this, I don't know how it would react then.
You see what I'm saying? That's the only wrench, is the cell plan is down, so she has zero connection. So as soon as you get to where you got to go, are you going to intentionally go to the Wi-Fi settings and say, hey, now I need to get connected? Because then why always say Starbucks? Because I thought the same thing you did. Maybe you should just automatically connect it to it before, not realizing you're connected to Jack in the Box. Does it really change anything? No, because she's still right where she said she was.
The whole non-phone plan thing breaks it down completely for me because I don't know exactly how it would react.
Right.
We'd have to test that.
Right.
I had a quick passage that I wanted to go back really quick because I never answered the question of the specifically sobering moment of going into the garage and seeing the poster.
Yeah.
So for me, I already take music deathly seriously. It's like a life and death thing for me. So any project I will go into with that mentality, but it gets like infinitely multiplied in that moment for me. Not like I already didn't know how serious this is, but someone said earlier how we kind of goof around a lot. That's definitely the dynamic. Like we goof around a lot, so then there is a switch when you see something like that and you're in that situation where it really feels like, for me personally, like it gives you very strong purpose that I felt like, I should be here. And there's like a lot to get done. There's a lot that we can do here with this and on the property, just the possibilities. It just felt like it definitely ratchets up the intensity, but it gets confusing because of how casual Rachael is about everything. But for me, it's like, I've worked on a lot of different projects in my life, a lot of TV shows that are like a stupid random talk show that gets canceled, and like what they were talking about anyway was just like gossip column stuff, something like that. There's a huge gap between that and then now I'm in this situation and it's a missing person and you're on the property of Rachael's property. It takes up the intensity a lot for sure. Like almost you have this like fight or flight response in your body, especially because we got there, it's nighttime. There's loud animal noises, huge property, there's guns, it was a movie.
Four of us tech boys can totally agree. Like, I love music. Music's my passion. I primarily work on music. Tristan loves film. Ethan loves film. They have their different niches in that. That's what we're all used to, is our kind of day-to-day utilization of those skills. And then a big reason why I love working on hide and seek is I can use these skills to contribute to something more real than I've ever had the opportunity to. Like, it's not just music absolutely plays to the soul. There's benefit to humanity through music, but all of a sudden my skill has consequence, and it lends to some really beneficial discoveries. Hopefully, it becomes a lot more real. It's like, I'm not just like, if I flub something, the worst thing that happens is I don't get paid and I disappoint a client. Here it becomes a lot more real. It's like literally a life could be at stake,
Yeah, no, that's what I was trying to say. That's the best way to put it, and that's why I was like, I'm so glad I'm here. I love this. Okay, like just a random anecdote here. Working at like NFL Network, I remember the funniest thing was there was a friend I have there who just did like PA stuff, and he was like, don't you find it hilarious that it's a bunch of old dudes that sit around in suits, but they're talking about like a sport where guys just go around and just hit each other? Like they take it super seriously, you know, and like you got to put the mic in the perfect spot, or like the mixer screaming at you and you're like, okay, I get it. I'm gonna do a good job, but it's not that serious, guys. Very different to this situation. Then, like, I mean, it's what you were saying is exactly what I was trying to say. That it's I loved being there because of that.
You get to live somebody else's life for the entire time that you're there.
Yeah, you kind of we're entering into their world, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So at the end of episode 4, we hear some gunshots.
We were getting ready for the interview. Ethan and the boys had finished getting shots, and we were getting ready. And I think, it was Tristan who was setting up the angles, and Shane and I were talking and just what we're going to do. And Tristan's setting up stuff. So when he's talking, we hear the shots go off, and we all went silent to listen. Like, is that what we think we're hearing? Mm. And it was like kind of like confirmation. And again, they just kept going. I'm trying to figure out what's going on. I exit the shop. We're all in the shop setting up for this interview, because that's where this next interview that we're going to be jumping in for episode 5. At this time of night, it was I want to say like around 6 p.m.
And it was the 5 of us, right? Rachael was in it.
No, we were originally in there, yeah. And
she said, I'll be right back, right?
Yeah. We're originally all in there.
Use the bathroom or something.
It definitely was a tense moment for all of, at least for me, it was walking out trying to figure out, because you don't know what's going on. We haven't heard shots all day. Yeah. This isn't normal. Like, if she's not responsible, who knows what their intentions are still at this day? Like, you put a target on your back when you say, I'm going to come and investigate this case.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was like the day before. I don't know if I had thought of this in the moment, but definitely like as we were trying to get out there, because we had to scramble and grab our cameras because we had set up for an interview, and then it's like, no, now we're going back out to figure out what we were listening to.
I was annoyed.
Oh,
because I was missing whatever it was. I'm like, oh, I'm not out there getting it.
Ethan, is there ever a moment when you're like you have this notion that something bad may be happening, like this situation, and you have to you got to follow, but it's just like you think I can't follow something. There's something bad happening. Does that ever cross your mind?
It's kind of like, it's an extreme example, but a war photographer, they go in, they get the shot, that's kind of the mindset I try to put myself in. And the camera to me is like a safety blanket when, realistically it's not, but I'm disconnected from reality. I'm following the camera to the thing, and I just happen to be the vehicle for that camera.
Yeah, I definitely did. Because here's the thing. The day before, our location was leaked on social media. We weren't at that point, or James wasn't at that point tied to searching, but we were like literally tagged, or I should say James was tagged on Facebook to be in Tenino, 20 minutes away. So I did have a thought. I'm like, oh, are we going to war with someone with a rival podcast? No. But I was like, is Rachael trying to protect James from people that want to, get to him? I don't know. I don't know if I thought of that in the moment, but
yeah.
Totally. I'm also city boy, but have a pretty rural upbringing, and I'm used to just hearing the one-off gunshots. So my mind always goes to, it's probably just a gunshot, but I think it was 6 that we heard. It was probably a whole clip, and it was steady. It wasn't aggravated. It wasn't quick. It sounded like someone target practicing. And that gave me a moment once I heard them all where I'm like, we're probably chilling. The other thing for me is, like Ethan said, there's protection in the camera, and he might have been talking about it a little bit differently, but to me, You have to be so stupid to do anything to us. We got you on 4 different audio recordings, 2 cameras at least. Unless I see James wigging out, I'm probably not going to wig out. Whether it be because he's a good leader or because that's our place and he is the leader, I think we all look to him to see what our reaction should be a lot of the time.
If someone showed up with a gun, they would probably go for James first. Oh, I recognize that guy. That's the podcast guy.
Yeah.
I didn't think that anything was going to happen to us. I was in the garage or whatever, and I didn't go. I'm not going to go towards the gunshots like Ethan. I'm doing the opposite. I was like, I'm hiding here.
It definitely caught me off guard because, I mean, again, she, up until that moment, I played it in the episode. She's like, what do you mean we're going to interview? Like, what kind of interview are you talking about? And I'm like, well, we're going to interview. And I think for Rachael, some of the closeness that we've talked about before in the past and her just feeling very welcoming, like, I still have to go through these questions. I appreciate the relationship. I still have to get answers to these questions, though. So the pushback on that, makes me feel like, well, there shouldn't be any pushback. Like, we should want to do this. This is getting the story out. Again, sets the tone, like arriving to the property. It's like, geez, okay, well, we're about to ask these difficult questions and you're going to go off and makes it uncomfortable.
What you described was the most jarring thing of all of it to me, actually, was because I'm going into it assuming I have something specific in mind. I'm assuming we're going to like go to a location, sit down and start this interview, and it's going to be this in a professional manner and mellow until you get to the intense questions. And if it was me, if I were her, I shouldn't put myself in that position, but I typically would want to like just get deep into it right away. And it was strange that she just wanted to like hang out. That's definitely different than most, I would assume.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's dive back in. So we are doing a new segment. This is something that we thought would be great for you guys to have the opportunity to hear a recap, have some just conversation about what's happened so far in the season for Shane. Again, going over the details from the first 4 episodes. So what we did is we asked for some questions from you guys, whether there was a call-in, email, and so we gathered some of those questions, and then also just some of the things that we felt were relevant and important to, clarify. There's a lot of discussion, of course, with the case, and that's great. We love, wanting to spread awareness, but there's just also a lot of stuff that kind of gets put out there that may not be, one, accurate, or sometimes it's just misinterpreted, or the context, we want to be able to add that. So that's what today is for. I kind of did this last season with the roundtable approach, but we're adding video to it. So if you're interested in watching this interview, you can head on over to Spotify and watch it there for free, no cost. Lots of questions to go over, lots of stuff to dive into. So let's get going.
We have a lot to cover.
Yes.
So the first thing that comes up is a question about the dogs on the property. Big dogs, guard dogs. Why do you think their behavior went unreported or seemed unremarkable on the day that Shane disappeared?
With Rachael, her saying that the dogs were, tired, she makes the comment that they didn't, when she got there to let them out, that they seemed like they'd already been on a long walk. It's a great question because anytime we approached and walked in, they were up right away. So, and I think anybody who wasn't someone that they were familiar with, they would have definitely alerted, and let alone, I think, defended Shane.
And were they aggressive?
No, they were actually very nice. No,
okay.
They were, I think Rachael even said that, like they're very sweet dogs, and I'm like, yeah. But like until you get to know them. Once they, got to smell the crew and meet us, they were totally fine. I think at one point, one of the guys even went into the trailer without Rachael being present.
Mm-hmm. So, and there was no That's
issues.
Interesting.
Yeah. If there was something that, though, happened inside the trailer, I still think, whether they knew Rachael or Shane, if they, once they realized you were a threat, I think they would have done something. I think you would have also seen it inside the trailer.
Yeah.
But
well, I mean, would you see it inside the trailer now at the time that you're there? A year, whatever later.
I'm just thinking
later.
In when law enforcement came by and they were so,
law enforcement. Yeah,
I'm thinking like when they were there at the property, just within days, looking, I imagine that they would have been able to say there's stuff busted up, cabinets are missing, stuff, whatever that you would ever see from any kind of domestic incident in a small confined space. Like I couldn't even, when I went into Shane's and Rachel's room, I couldn't stand all the way up because I was too tall, and I'm 6'1", so if there was again two guys wrestling or something like that going on. So the dog's not barking, obviously Shane's not in there when Rachael goes there at 11:30. The other thing that I've thought about, of course, was there something that was causing the dogs to behave that way that wasn't normal? You have to kind of consider all things.
So Rachael, in one of your interviews with her, she mentions that there was like no demands for ransom. There were no threatening calls. There was nothing like that. So for you, does this eliminate scenarios?
Yeah, I mean, because if you don't have ransom, then you can rule out certain motives, right? Like, so obviously Shane and them didn't have money. It kind of narrows it down towards more of it being, in my opinion, a personal matter here. Versus random act of violence. Selecting a family or a person for ransom, doesn't make sense. If Shane left that property, I believe he knew them and it was arranged and he was going to go somewhere with them. With the no ransom, no threats, I just think it's more in line with it's a personal incident. And we talked about this, with the guys, with where the property is located too, with it being so far out there, kind of like in the country. Yeah, you're not wandering down that road for there to be usually like a opportunity for a random incident. Not saying it doesn't happen, like someone hasn't wandered off into a random, but just
sure. Yeah, it's just not the most common possibility. That road is pretty. I was surprised at how, there's video of you driving up that road. I was kind of surprised at how secluded it really is. And particularly their property is, there's a lot of just land around them, just empty forest. And, it's not someplace you're just going to stumble onto.
Yeah. And, some of these houses, some of them are tucked away. Like, for example, Shane and Rachel's, you have to go up a little incline, of a driveway to see the actual property. But some of these houses you see them right from, the road. And so, doing something randomly in front of these properties, running that risk, it just doesn't line up. So no ransom, no threats. This is a personal matter, in my opinion.
Yeah. So Rachael kind of discussed several theories that she had about Shane's disappearance.
Yeah.
And so out of the theories that she's discussed with you, what do you think the most likely is?
When I first started, I felt like him going out the back seemed most likely, because
the back of the
property, for a walk, and whether it was to track a cougar or bear, if it was suicide, back of the property, if that's what happened.
Sure.
Maybe he was meeting somebody out there for some reason. When she talks about everything he was wearing, his gun, his jacket, the dogs, that seemed most likely. That seems like, okay, if the dogs did go on a walk, let's say Shane did take them, and Rachel's in the shop, returns, goes to make her coffee, decides to head back out for some reason. In terms of like him disappearing, you would think he would more than likely disappear somewhere out there than along the main road.
Yeah.
Right. So that's why I think it seems like he went out the back then. If he's taking his 40, this is the gun he would take out there because larger caliber. That's the one that seems most plausible. I don't understand taking the larger caliber gun if you're going out the front. And the 2 additional magazines, not taking the cell phone, even if it's not working. Like, I'm just curious, what would make him want to do that? I was leaning towards going out the back. What about you?
I think, in discussing the gun, he takes the larger caliber. And so I just thought for a little bit there, I was kind of thinking maybe it was just the closest one to him, and that's what he grabbed. But then we we find out that he took 2 magazines with him.
Mm-hmm.
And that seems more like of a decision rather than just grabbing what's closest to you, because you got to get the magazine. So yeah, I was with you. At first I really kind of thought back of the property seems like the most reasonable explanation, but my thoughts change all the time. So
Evidence, right? He didn't have anything that he was going to be commuting from his property out the front, right? He didn't
Right.
take the side by side, didn't have a car.
Right.
They shared
Right.
he had the van, but they're all vehicles are accounted for. So probably out the back. With her theories, that's what I lean towards coming into this.
one of her theories was that he might have encountered a group of people in the woods. Do we have any evidence to support this?
No. And for her, I think a lot of it sometimes is probably just trying to make sense of the situation, right? So
For sure.
that's a lot of some of the stuff that we hear, like you're a missing spouse, you're going to grasp at every straw. So I get where she's going with it. But when you think about it, like in any kind of, when you think about where Shane's and Rachel's property's at, like if they were to meet in the back, how do they get to that location? They would have to go through another private property residence to get there, right? So then they got to kind of be in on it, or they have to find somewhere to sneak in there on off-road somewhere. All for what? Right?
Yeah.
Like if they're doing something private, you can just go up Shane's property. We've already talked about it. Like you have to go up an incline. You have to what would be the purpose of them not meeting there to have this discussion or conversation or meeting? Prevent it from Rachel. If you're Shane, you would just take the side by side way out in the woods somewhere. If you were actually going to meet them and not go on foot, where you're giving Rachel an opportunity to catch up.
Right. Right.
The theory of someone meeting him back there. Why not just meet me at the front of the road? Pick me up. Let's go for a drive. We'll talk about it. That makes way more sense. Like, what's the point of not trying to be seen? Again, we're out in the country. Like, it doesn't, to me, it doesn't come off like they need to not be seen here because, let's say maybe they did have wrong, ill intentions going into this. Meet me at the road on Sargent, or meet me down the road. I'm not coming out to your driveway or whatever. When you think about it, it don't really make sense why they would meet out there. I haven't seen any evidence of it.
Especially the amount of land that's out there. You have to pick an access point that's pretty far away, and you're going to have to do quite a hike to get, up to their property. It just doesn't.
Yeah, you have also neighbors mentioning how they've seen Shane in the case file. It mentions how they've seen Shane out walking on these trails. Yes, it's a lot of acres behind them, but again, just to say, hey, let's meet back out here. Like, let's just meet in the shop.
Yeah.
So
much easier. Rachel says that there's no way that Shane would have left without a fight. What do you think this reveals about his personality?
I think he's a fighter, right? He's not going to go quietly. And if he's confronted in a scenario, and I'd say not even just Rachel, with people, I can just add to that testimony right now, or that statement that they've said, Shane would have probably said something and wouldn't have gone quietly. And I made a point in just saying, that we all do think that we would do certain things under certain scenarios. But, it's another thing when you're actually confronted. And I don't know how many times, obviously, Shane's ever been in that situation, if that's what happened. Also, if, I've thought this is, if he was in a situation where he was going to deal with an encounter with somebody that was a dangerous situation, including like a gun, a knife, and he knew additional noise or causing more of a scene would bring it back to Rachel coming out, and then her being in danger. Rachel's like, no, he knew. She said in the episode, if I would have heard something, I would have came out guns blazing, and she does. She's someone who knows her way with a gun. She knows how to shoot it. She knows her. How to handle it. So I think she would have gone out there to help Shane. So
the phones and Apple Watches, smartwatches, were not working reportedly after around 11 a.m. on the 8th. So knowing this, how does this piece into the timeline kind of inform your understanding of the overall timeline.
At least it tells you that if there is going to be some sort of form of communication, it's going to need to be done through some sort of internet provider, right?
Yeah.
It's off around 11:30 due to non-payment type of situation. The bill should show that. Perfect. And then when it turns on, should show that. Perfect. And when it was paid, timestamp, everything like that, that's helping, right?
Yeah.
And if there's any kind of data communication going on that actually forces you to use an IP address or forces you to, use some sort of Wi-Fi, right? So then you can kind of see, and it goes across all devices, Hayden's, Rachel's, Dan, or not Danner's, but the iPad, the watches. It does a lot of, actually it helps. I think it kind of helped out a lot in terms of being able to narrow in on where someone was at when they're using the phone.
Yeah, I would agree. I think, the Wi-Fi, especially connecting and whatever, it's a great way to be able to place somebody somewhere. So I think that was actually very helpful. So the kids, Danner and Hayden, we've kind of heard that they've avoided the property since Shane went missing. What do you think this suggests about their emotional state, first? And second, their perception of what happened?
Yeah. I kind of took it as Rachel maybe kind of like overselling it a little bit, if I were to be honest, just because I had a conversation with Danner about it and I didn't get that vibe. And I had already talked to Hayden as well, and I didn't get the vibe from either one of them. Like, this is a kind of like a super emotional, difficult thing to deal with. Like, it was very much like, yeah, let's talk about it. Thanks. Let's just cool. Let me share with what I know. This is I'm just as lost as you are. And so when Rachel was sharing this, I was like, I'm kind of getting two different tones. Over
momming?
Yeah. Which is understandable,
Yeah.
Could it be true too that they're kind of selling that to her too, and I don't know. But I just was getting two different tones. So I didn't really feel like them not being able to come back was as accurate as I was hearing it.
I think also, she's lost her partner of, 22 years. And so I think maybe it sometimes it must feel like they aren't there, they're not coming there. It must feel like that because, she's used to being at that property with somebody for a long time.
Right.
I kind of took it as like she's speaking as how it feels. So kind of the mom thing. That too.
But, I think just the family dynamics, Danner said he was already planning on moving out, which is totally realistic, seems like it could be very well what was happening. He was 21, wanted to live in with his girlfriend, and did that.
Yeah.
It wasn't like Hayden wasn't staying with Brooke prior to that. It wasn't like all of a sudden this thing with Shane that happened caused them to do this.
Right.
Some of these plans were already in the works with Danner, and Hayden was already going back and forth.
There was already an evolution there that was working out before.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. When I heard that though, and I was like, what, kids aren't coming back? Like, of course, when I already took into consideration what the kids had told me, still was like, it was like an eyebrow raiser for a second. When you hear that, you're like, oh, so wait, what's going on? But without having that conversation with the kids, I would have been like, why don't they want to come home?
So listeners notice that Rachel's behavior kind of shifts. It goes from crying one moment in anger, the next moment in aggression. So do you interpret this as like the natural response to stress, or do you think there's something deeper there?
I think everybody's different, and I try to just treat it like that. In my experience with 4 different families now, each family processes it differently, and you kind of just fit into that world when you're investigating and you're working with them and you're talking about sensitive stuff. Like, you meet them where they're at. Her emotional up and down caught me off guard, made me feel uncomfortable, but you kind of just, again, fit into their world. I'm not here to be argumentative or difficult to deal with, all right? So I'm always going to find a way to try to make things work. Did it cause any red flags? When she was reacting that way, I was looking at her like, okay, where's this coming from? I'm not but I don't want to be suspicious of you, but I'm also kind of like, this isn't normal. We haven't really talked like this, and this is all happening right now. Like, what's going on? As much as there is a lot of emotions going on throughout that day, you kind of just take it on the chin and roll with the punches.
Yeah, so it kind of causes you to be more cognizant of the interactions and how she's responding and how you're responding.
We have a job to do, right? So we're there.
Yeah.
You can't you know what I'm saying? So you have to figure out a way to how do you emotionally and relationally and investigate this moving forward if this is how her demeanor is right now. So you have to try to find how to bridge that. And I don't know.
How to tolerate. Yeah.
You know, so when we talk about this with the guys yesterday, but when we come outside, or at least we go into the shop and she's cordial, like she's seen us like we've been best friends forever, it actually kind of made it easier to move forward.
Yeah. So Rachael says that Shane changed the propane tank around 7:30, and Hayden has this exchange with him, and they say that that's around 7:30, but the case file says much later at 11:30. So how do you make sense of these discrepancies?
I don't know. I'm just as lost as you are when it comes to that, right? Like, we're reading in the case file law enforcement's summary, I guess, of their testimony, so we're taking them at their words, but you know, we are all human. So human error, of course, can happen. But when you see multiple officers reporting the same information, that's where I even asked you, I was like, do you think it's possible that they could have even been like sharing reports, like just grabbing what this officer had reported and pulling it in? Because the only 11:30 time that makes sense is when Rachael goes back to the RV on the 9th. But again, we're talking about the night of the 8th. So the 11:30, 7:30, I mentioned a 4-hour swing is just too much for me.
Yeah, that's a big difference.
You know, my communication with the sheriff's office has been great, and I've had positive meetings with them, and part of that, which we'll get to at some point, is being able to go back and possibly getting the original audio recordings of the interviews on the 9th and the days after. Yeah. But I'd like to add, I think it's clear that the case file states that the last person to see Shane, whether it was 7:30, 11:30, had to have been the kids, though, because even if we're just going off the case file, it says Hayden saw him around 7:30-ish, and then 11:30, but then also says, you know, it claims Danner did too. The last person, as I understood coming into this, and even on this trip, was Hayden was the last person to set eyes on Shane through the kitchen window.
Yeah.
The discrepancy in that was cause for concern for me, for sure.
I think that was a cause for concern for both of us. I sometimes think that there was a mistake in the case file, you know, in the original reporting. But then I go back and forth because, like you said, are they going to take information from one officer and just keep passing it along as incorrect?
You'd hope not.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I would hope not, but we don't know. That's the thing. Right. We don't know.
Right. So I think more than anything, like if that happens, or let's say you figure that out, like correct it, move forward.
Yeah, for sure.
Right.
So instead of asking friends when Rachael makes calls, instead of asking friends if they had seen Shane, she calls and reports that he's missing. So what do you make of this approach?
I think it without like taking into consideration when exactly did she start calling to share that he was missing versus when did he call to, or when was she calling to ask, have you seen him? Right. Yeah. Because I think when you're explaining this, you can easily kind of sometimes like just, I was calling asking people if they'd seen him, then I was calling to report. Yeah. Because in the same call, you can be doing the same thing. Right. So I just try to leave room for grace in that. And when she says I was calling people, you know, she says the first person she calls, which to me I felt was important. Like, who's the first person you're calling when he's missing? and that's Brandy, her friend. I know that she's asked people, have you seen Shane? I know that there were people that she was calling to ask that question specifically. It wasn't always just a report that, hey, I'm just letting you know he's missing. To be fair, I do think that we just haven't got to that point yet and sharing and going over who those calls were placed to. Because again, Rachael makes lots of calls on the 9th because she's being told by law enforcement to reach out and try to find him, which she should be doing, which she is doing. We'll get to those.
Yeah. And it seems logical to do, actually. That's what I would do.
Yeah.
So Josh shows up at the property while you're there, but he leaves pretty abruptly. So first, why do you think he came, knowing that you were there? And 2, why do you think he just left so abruptly?
I don't know. What did you make of that? I mean, you got a chance to see the film yourself, and so I think it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll ask you. What did you think seeing it?
I recently, as a matter of fact, just today, I went back and watched that, and I was shocked at how you told me, like, oh, it was just a minute, like he was there just a minute, but he was in and out. It was very fast. It was much faster than what I had thought. When you say somebody came in, asked a question, blah blah blah, and they turned back around, I was not thinking this fast. I don't know. I know that there were words spoken between Rachael and Josh. They must have been very small words because it was very, very fast. He barely stopped. And, Rachael approaches the fence because you guys are inside the goat pen, and he barely stops. They have an exchange of few words, and before you even realize really what's happening, before you actually, Jam, even make it a quarter of the way to the fence, he's gone already.
Do you make anything of it?
I do.
You do?
I do. I thought that it was, he knew that you were there, and I felt like it was kind of coming to check out what's going on, whether that was as like an old friend, like, is everything okay? I don't know these people coming here to talk to her about this very sensitive situation. I thought it was either that, or he's coming to kind of case things out because maybe he knows something. Whether he does or doesn't, I don't know, but that was my initial feeling.
Yeah. I'm there, right? And what I'm there for and what I'm doing and my intentions, and Rachel's communicated this to him, right? So if you're him and you're a friend of hers and you're supporting her find her husband, showing up abruptly like that in the way that you did, definitely, usually they'll jump out. Nice to meet you. Thanks for doing this. Just gonna grab this trailer real quick. Rachel, is that cool? Sorry, don't mean to interrupt. I can come back later. Nope, you're good. There usually is some sort of like communication. Now, if he pulls up and he sees 2 cameras, 2 other guys walking around, he sees 5 individuals all, who knows? He might be like, I don't want to deal with this. I'm gonna take off. I could totally understand that.
Yeah.
But it was the decision to come anyways, running that risk without, I guess, communicating to Rachael, asking, mentioning. Maybe he didn't see us when he was pulling up, but you talk about the time and how long they were there for. He was there for. You go up the incline driveway, you go around the mobile home and the RV, and as you continue, our cars are all parked out there, for example. Yeah, just the decision to do that. He's been on searches. He's been someone who I've heard people talk about how he was supportive and trying to help out a friend. Jump on out, say what's up. Just took off, and you guys hear me make the comment, just how I take it, and as an interesting point that Charlie's not making any noise.
Right.
Could that be because Rachael was right there? Could be. The dogs did bark though, and that's what Rachael does right away. Like, it's just Josh, and that comment in itself made me feel like, okay, well, he must be comfortable with the dogs then. They must be familiar with who he is.
Rachael claims that Shane took a shower the morning that he disappeared. So first, how credible do you think that is? And does it provide any meaningful insight into the timeline.
How credible? I think it's got to be very credible, right? It's from her testimony. If we're thinking like, okay, so could this be Hayden or Brooke? Well, didn't they shower last night? Maybe they shower again in the morning. Possible. But if they showered before school, that'd have been like around 6 a.m., right? So if Rachel's seeing the shower, I think she refers to them as drops of water, driplets from along the wall. That's around 11:30, 11:40ish p.m. or a.m. still. That can't be the girls, right? So that's Shane taking a shower the morning of the 9th. I think about, like, what does that say about his mentality? What does that say about, if you felt like a threat was coming and you were trying to get prepared for it, like, I'm not really taking that into consideration, right? If I'm getting ready to go somewhere, then maybe I'm doing what he's doing, regardless of the threat, if I'm going with him. But Rachel says she sees even like his razor shavings, and I thought, like, wow, that's crazy. Like, you saw all of this, like, thought about all of this. So we know she wakes up, takes a shower, maybe walks the dogs, makes the coffee, and then leaves.
It does make me wonder how he's able to do all of these things, including taking a shower, without really any detection. And whether that be like sight or hearing or whatever, didn't hear a door close. I know that she's in the shop, but there's no door slamming or closing. He's just undetected. And with the timeline of the girls going to school, it makes me wonder how early was he up taking a shower? And was he up taking a shower because he was planning to do something, to go somewhere? And is he up early because of that? It brings me down a little bit of a rabbit hole.
Yeah. He's taking a shower, and let's say the water's still there. How much time are you giving the water to still be there by the time Rachel enters and discovers that he took a shower? How much time are you giving before that? 30 minutes, an hour?
I don't know, because I don't know. It depends how humid is the house.
Okay.
Say on the stretch, generously 90 minutes.
Okay. So if we're doing 90 minutes, hour and a half, right? We're at the time is 11:30 when she leaves the shop. Hour and a half before that?
10.
Okay. Hour before that?
9.
She says it takes him an hour to get ready. So if he's taking a shower by 9, he's done by 10. If he's done by 10, that means he doesn't make her coffee for an hour and a half, but he's ready, and he doesn't go to the shop, and he doesn't have self-service. It doesn't really, as far as the timeline. Now, let's say he doesn't take an hour long. Let's say he takes a 30-minute. 10:30, he's still ready. Maybe it was a quick shower. Maybe he was in a rush.
And still undetected, and still Rachel doesn't ever see him that morning.
I think the other thing,
walking, in and out, whatever.
Yeah. And the other thing is just also the evidence of where the robe is at. His robe.
His robe.
His routine. The robe is where it would be if he took a shower that morning. And then, yeah. So, just following kind of like this, just following, okay.
Rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also following, like, okay, making sure things also check off. Like, so where was the robe, and where was this at? Where was that at? And, like, just making sure it's all adding up. Kind of just keeping receipts on stuff.
So Rachel mentions looking for car tracks or, a sign of a struggle on the property. Why do you think she anticipated these specific clues? Like, she's anticipating perhaps foul play if she's looking for a sign of a struggle on the property, right? So why do you think that she looks for these clues?
I think the problem I was struggling with in that moment, and then hearing this and what she was saying, trying to understand, like, are you referring to like a regular routine, or are you talking about what you did? Like, And so when she was explaining this stuff to me, and she was like, I came out here looking for car tracks, and right away, like at a moment, like I tried to stop her just to like make sure I'm clarifying, like right away you came out looking for this, and she's like, yeah. The fact that you're looking for tracks just because you didn't see him in the RV, it seems a little premature, for sure. So he's not in the RV, coffee's out. This is the first place you checked. You cannot tell me that you're concerned yet. And I make a point to ask consistently, are you freaking out yet? Are you concerned yet? And just to kind of trying to get her to, remember what her emotions were. And so in that comment about looking for car tracks, we actually get to it in an interview coming up here soon. That comment, and even the comment about the blood.
Is that a sign that she, looking for evidence of a struggle, makes me wonder, did she have reason to think that there may have been a struggle? Did she know that there was maybe a strained relationship with somebody? Maybe there was a threat. Maybe something like that made her think that there could have been a struggle if she can't find him.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think
so. That's where my mind went right away. Like, why are you looking for this sign of a struggle? Did something precipitate that?
Well, I mean, hearing what she shared,
I don't know.
That? I mean, is there anything that you're hearing from her as she's sharing about what happened and what we know about that morning? She walks in, she hasn't seen Shane, hasn't come out with the coffee yet. Like, it's around 11:30, so she comes out, sees the coffee in there, and doesn't see him. And, like, okay, takes the coffee with her and leaves, trying to look for tracks. Like, in my mind, I'm thinking if you started to look for him at that moment, and your most reasonable explanation is that he went out for a walk to track a cougar. Mm-hmm. Do the lap.
Then there probably isn't. Rachael has pointed out several times that Shane would not have left the property with somebody willingly. So what do you think makes her so sure of that? And do you think her asserting this kind of helps or hinders the investigation? The certainty that he would not leave the property with somebody willing.
I think it only can help if you're going off of someone's behavioral, like their behavior, right? So you're going off of their tendencies, what they would. So if this is some sort of, she feels very strongly to say this, then there must have been good reason for him to go with this individual. If that's how he was, if he wouldn't normally just go with people or didn't like to, wouldn't prefer it, or he had strong reasons or reasons we don't know yet that are clear that Rachael would makes that statement. And I think it's helpful to know that because everything should continue to line up. So whoever he went with, if he left the property with them, obviously was a serious reason for him to do so. Interesting to think, okay, if that's how he felt, who would he have chosen and why, and like what's the relationship and where's the trail, like where's the communication trail? That he had to have somehow, some way communicated with this individual. We talked about the cell phones being down already. Like you have to communicate with some sort of internet. I think it helps.
So does it say anything about who you think he might have gone with?
We know the individuals like Danner's at work, Rachel's at the property. Some of his closest friends like Don's nowhere, not nearby. John, that Rachael gets money from, is nowhere nearby. Could be somebody that we're just not aware of. That's more along the business dealings.
Yeah. I think that's where my mind goes to.
Well, back up to that. Why not take the silver car? If they have a car there, why not take the silver car? Rachael needs it.
Oh.
Why not tell Rachael you're going to take it to go somewhere if you're planning on returning, right?
Yeah.
Hayden's going to Brooks. It's not like she needs a ride. She's getting a ride there after school from the bus. Danner's got his own car. Why not take the silver car if Shane needs it? Why get the ride? It's not like Rachael needs it because she has to go somewhere. I mean, she's helping out the house.
So does that make you think, one of two things, like he's not planning on coming back, or this meeting This potential meeting was unplanned, and it was more like, hey, hop in, we're going to go do ABC. Do either of those things kind of stick out for you now?
I'm more lined in to think that we don't know of somebody yet. Like a business, like a dealing that we're not familiar with yet. If he's looking at trying to get this Montesano property, and he's trying to like work in a deal where he's gonna take it over, basically, you gotta to be able to come up with the money to do something like that. You'd have to take a major risk, and that might involve doing a business dealing with dangerous individuals. Like, we don't know.
Yeah, sure.
Is that him leaving the property in a way where he doesn't want to get Rachael involved, doesn't really want to discuss it, he'll explain it later, type of thing? Cell phones down, but it's also hard for me to think someone's gonna. I was gonna say take that kind of risk when they're and try to get into that type of a business situation when you can't pay for a cell phone bill. But I guess that's the whole point of taking the risk of trying to come up on something that could possibly be dangerous. Like we don't know.
So there's been the mention of a blue sedan, the neighbor, this blue sedan. Have you been able to uncover any leads about this blue sedan or its potential involvement?
Nothing actually on the leads with the blue sedan. And I feel like when I read this case file, I felt like, okay, well, the blue sedan's a big deal because if Rachel's leaving, then who's in the blue sedan? If this blue sedan is not Danner's car like they say in the case file,
right?
Because the case file states that the neighbor was questioned by law enforcement. What was it, a day later?
Yes, the next day.
When they confused it with Danner being Danner's car, I was really just like, that doesn't make sense. If Danner's leaving so early in the morning, this neighbor would have never been out present to see that. That wouldn't make any sense. Here with Rachael, she says they look into it. They confirmed it was a confusion. Would she forget like which day it was if it was a day later? But I think that blue sedan's could possibly a bigger piece of the puzzle here than they realized maybe early on. Yeah,
I would agree.
What was the reason and why you thought 7:30ish was the time? Like, what specific? Is it a job? Is it? That's what I'm curious. All right, what is it for Danner? Yeah, he's leaving for work at 5 a.m.
Sure. Yeah.
Rachel, the 7:15ish, taking the girls to school, taking Brooks first, but school, right?
So many individuals seem unwilling to speak with you about Shane's disappearance. How do you interpret this silence? Does it bring about suspicion for you, or is it just like a frustrating roadblock?
Both. It's both for me, because at times it's like, hey, I put it on the table. We don't got to be on record. We don't got to record, because I get not everybody, there are some people who just don't want to be a part of it in that kind of way, and that's fine. Most people are a part of it. And sometimes, like I said, they just don't want to be on the mic, and that, again, totally fine. But when you don't want to help, and this is like your close friend or somebody that you shared life with, it's confusing. It's frustrating because you don't want to assume, you don't want to think, you don't want to put this cloud over them and be like, what's going on here? But it makes it confusing that they don't want to share what could be possibly helpful information. Yeah, it's both. You just kind of have to filter it and follow the other leads and see if there's anything that points back, and just try to be patient. What I think a reason that maybe some people don't want to come forward is because, they've experienced somewhat of, what I've already experienced, and that sometimes people just take in information and then they kind of throw it out there, say this about you, and not, for me, I'm good with it. You can say what you want, but not everybody is good with it. Not everybody wants to be on front A Street or is willing to be at least put out there like that. So I get it. But it's that part where I still let them know, like, hey, I don't got to record, but let me at least just try to confirm some things. Some people you can kind of be like, okay, like they don't want to participate, but it's the ones who were very close at the scene.
So we've come to the last question.
Okay.
Listeners have pointed out inconsistencies in Rachel's recollections and actions. So how do you navigate those discrepancies?
Next time on hide and seek. I'm just kidding. I think anybody who actually puts their own memory to the test.
Yeah.
Like, I challenge you to do it. Just because it's easier said than done. Hindsight 2020, being able to look at the scene, being able to like criticize someone's actions, behaviors, memory. I mean, that's not fair. Like, you weren't trained for this. You're not prepared for this. So, but you know, and I think everybody understands that. I think most people try to consider a reasonable approach. And I've done this plenty of times where I'm following myself backwards and trying to like recount my memory and then in that process, it corrects something. And I think everybody's experienced that. And then there's of course some things where I'm like, yo, you're not going to forget that. And I've talked to many of the victims, surviving victims from all families, and Rachael herself has said, you'll never forget. You won't ever forget this, or you won't ever forget that. And that's key things that she remembers about Shane. For example, leaving the mobile home. And when she exited and looking back at Shane, that was the last time she said she made eye contact with him. She's never going to forget it. So in balancing that, at the end of the day, certain things are going to have proof and support the evidence, right? So cell phone activity. I don't know. It's like tug of war. You don't know. It's like knowing when to pull, when to stand firm, when to give a little bit, and then when to anchor back down and pull. Like it's.
What's a good comparison?
Yeah.
Do you think it's been tougher this time than, in other seasons when you're trying to navigate discrepancies and figure out what's going to lead you someplace? Is it tougher this time?
Yeah. I've never, dealt with the spouse like this. Yeah, it's difficult. The proof is going to be in the pudding. It's just a matter of grabbing all the information and then holding it against the wall and saying what sticks.
Has it been more difficult this time around? And you said yes, you're working with a spouse. This is the first time working with a spouse. But let's go with something positive. Have there been benefits to working with the spouse?
Oh yeah. Someone was next to Shane for 22 years, married, shared life, habits, tendencies, struggles, what things brought him joy. Absolutely. You get a lot. Yeah, I mean, just you guys heard Rachael when I'm standing in the RV, which is very kind of like a surreal moment, is I'm standing next to the bed and she's like, this is his phone. Here's his watch. Here, take these. And she gives them to me. I'm like, I'm kind of okay. I put him in my pocket, and it's like you realize you got this man's phone and watch now, and she's just like saying, "Hey, here, take it." She didn't have to do that. I didn't have to ask. And so it's when she does stuff like that, it goes a long way for me. And I know that people are probably going to say, "Yeah, well, she could have deleted stuff." That's true, but she gave law enforcement stuff right away. And so let's just hope law enforcement celebrate software programming is what they say. And if you did delete something. It's going to show. Makes it easier, but it's more difficult in a way. From an investigative standpoint, it makes it easier. I guess like as like independently like investigating this and how I usually approach with developing friendships and building relationships through the process. It's very difficult at times, but she knows like she knows like I won't let that get in the way. Like, and she's been receptive of that 100%, even when it's been difficult. Would you do all of this if, you know what I'm saying? Like, would you go through all of this if you...
It's a lot. It's a lot. Yeah.
Hi, Sarah and James. I wanted to call and leave a message about something that caught my attention on episode 3, right around minute mark 1541. And it's where Rachael references, and there I'm going to say this with the caveat that there may be context that I didn't hear that wasn't included in the podcast, but Rachael references unprompted sinking a skid steer on the property in a big mud pit. And that caught my attention for a couple of reasons. Primarily, we own a skid steer, and I was hoping for some additional clarification whether Rachael is claiming that she's sunk like an entire skid steer and it's still there, or did she just sink it and it got stuck, had to be towed out? But also the big mud pit. Having my own piece of equipment that is like that, it is very, very hard, if not impossible, unless you literally drive it into a lake or like the swamps from Neverending Story to actually sink a skid steer. They're flat on the bottom all the way around. The tracks don't make it easy. And at least part, if not the majority, of the equipment would remain exposed. So it was an odd statement to make, and I was just kind of hoping that maybe you could ask for additional clarification around that piece. I'm also curious if the mud pit was ever searched for Shane. I know that they took cadaver dogs and heat-seeking dogs out there, but I'm not sure that it would pick up on something if it was buried into a mud pit the size of something that could actually, if she did sink an entire skid steer, something of that magnitude, would the cadaver dogs pick up on it? Great, that's all I got. Thank you. Bye.
Awesome. Great question, and good job picking that up, because I did, when Rachael mentioned that to me, I was like, that's odd. Because you heard that correct. She did sink an entire skid steer. As far as we know, law enforcement was there on the 11th. They were there sometime after. They did take a cadaver dog. It sunk some time later. It wasn't like immediately right after. It wasn't something like that, but it was some time later. That would mean that she would have to dig something and then bring Shane's body there, bury him there, because they were at the property. They would have noticed at least something like that dug up. As far as the mud goes, this is like an area where Charlie, I'll post this picture online so you can check it out, but it's just like an area where Charlie would live, and it was like a fenced in, and just with the rain, apparently Rachael said it would get so muddy, and so apparently that's what caused it to sink. I'm just gonna share. I don't know if that's accurate or if that's possible or not. I don't know. That's just what I was told.
Good attention.
We are working with Mike this season, and that's a question that we can ask him. And we also have working with another person from Search and Rescue. But just to ask, hey, would the cadaver dogs pick up on the scent on something like that? And even today, let's say, would they pick up on something now today?
Yeah.
So, great question. One more.
I think that this is the line for the Hide and Seek podcast. I'm just going to leave my message with my thoughts. So my thought right now, after listening to episode 5, is a little bit strange. So based off of everything that Rachel's been saying, Shane was the breadwinner. She relied on him pretty heavily for money. And that's a really big focus. She'll always talk about finances. Anyways, my point is Rachael seems to have taken things a little bit differently in reality, because she's renovating the bathroom and the flooring in the mobile home, if I'm understanding things correctly. And I don't understand how she's able to do things like that if she's struggling financially. She's mentioned the property taxes, the mortgage, and how all of those things are overwhelming. So it's a little strange that she's doing all of that renovating. And then who was that random friend that popped up while James was recording that just disappeared back into the middle of nowhere? That was so strange. But anyway, the finances and the renovating are a really big red flag to me. And she recently posted on Facebook of her and her new boyfriend having some sort of bonfire, and it looked like the center of the barn was on fire too. So that was really strange. But yeah, I hope that this is the right line to leave this message to. Otherwise, check out the Hide and Seek podcast.
Finances and the remodeling part. When I reached out to Rachael, she did say that the remodeling was taking place like on that day. And so this is like over nearly a year later after Shane disappeared. And like if something happened, she wouldn't have waited that long to do what she was doing. The reason for remodeling, I'm not sure. As it was explained, it needed to be replaced. makes sense that she prioritized it. How is she making money? You know, she talked about selling some stuff and selling some of Shane's tools, and it's not cheap, you know, some of the stuff he owned. You know, in my time, as we'll work through the season, you know, Rachael gets a job. I do understand how it might come across to people who are thinking like, whoa, you're remodeling as we're diving into this and your husband's missing? Yeah, but it's a year later, you know, if you think about it. Law enforcement's been there multiple times. Mm-hmm.